Hey everybody, Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors and the director of the Real Estate Academy of America, continuing on with the series on the changes that the Georgia Association of Realtors, or GAR, or GAR, has made to the 2025 contract package. Please check the description below for all the other videos I have done in this series, as well as a link to the school's website, Real Estate Academy of America, where you can sign up for free CE classes on all of these changes throughout the month of December and January 2025. Please continue to check back on our calendar as we do add classes. We're adding classes right now for January. So the January schedule is not complete as we continue to add on. So today's video is on the changes that GAR has made to Instructions to Closing Attorney, Form F-255. Not a lot of changes. One change I actually did a video on earlier in December. And I might take down that video after January, but you'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute. So let me share my screen and we will dive in on the minor changes that GAR has made to the Instructions to Closing Attorney. So this is the 2025 version of F-255 Instructions to Closing Attorney. Parenthetically, I have done previous videos on when you should use this form. And in that video, and in the classes I teach, I highly suggest that agents in Georgia use this form in concert with any other form that you have used in a contract where broker compensation, both on the seller side and the buyer side, has been negotiated and agreed to. This is just a great summary form. It's not necessarily required if broker compensation has been agreed to and signed off on by the parties paying the money and receiving the money on another form. However, this is just a good checks and balances to make sure everyone is on the same page. Both brokers, buyer, seller, closing attorney, and especially your compliance brokers. However, all of that being said, please check with your own broker regarding any policies and procedures they may have. But again, this is just a good summary. But sometimes this might be the only form that you use. If compensation is to the, well, let me just go over the form. Okay, this is the 2025 version. Basically, what was added, two minor changes, check boxes and a buyer signature line. So you're all used to seeing this. This is the purchase and sale agreement, and you write out the name of the buyer and the seller and the date and the property address. This first paragraph is compensation paid by the seller to the seller's broker. And that amount is expressed as a percent of the purchase price, flat fee dollar amount, or some other arrangement. Paragraph number 2, compensation shared by the seller's broker with the buyer's broker. That would be what we would consider a traditional co-op transaction arrangement where the sellers paid a big pile of money to their own broker with the instruction that their broker is to share part of that money with a broker representing a buyer. And so the money coming to the buyer's broker is coming from the seller's broker. Now, as I've mentioned in previous videos, and you can go back and check out those videos, seller's broker typically gets paid one way, by the seller. There are some exceptions, I know, but generally speaking, typically the seller's broker only gets paid from the seller. The buyer's broker, however, as a reminder, can get paid from the buyer directly, from the seller directly, from the seller's broker, or in any combination. Therefore, on the instructions to closing attorney, all of those various methods that in which a buyer's broker can get paid are spelled out on this form. So, number one, how is the seller's broker getting paid? Typically from the seller. Compensation paid by the seller to the seller's broker. The next three items, the next three paragraphs, 2, 3, and 4, those have to deal with how the buyer's broker is getting compensated. So again, the paragraph number 2 is the buyer's broker is getting compensated from the seller's broker. And again, all of these are spelled out as a percent of the sale price, a flat fee dollar amount, or other. And there can be various combinations, which is why we now have the check boxes. You are to check all that apply. Paragraph number 3, the buyer's broker, if the buyer's broker is getting compensated directly from the seller, and that would have been negotiated either using a special stipulation or the F-259, the buyer's broker compensation agreement exhibit. So that if the seller is paying the buyer's broker directly, you fill out that amount in paragraph number 3. And then in paragraph number 4 is the amount that the buyer is compensating the buyer's broker. So the buyer is obligated to pay their broker a certain amount for professional services, and that's all negotiated and agreed to on the buyer brokerage agreement. However, there are situations where a seller agrees to offset the buyer's financial obligation to their own broker. Sometimes that offset is in total, so there's no additional money at closing that a buyer would have to pay their own broker. Sometimes the buyer will have a financial obligation to their broker for one amount, and the seller or the seller's broker is compensating the buyer's broker, but it doesn't offset the full amount. So that's why you have all of these paragraphs. There could be in combination. Typically, number 1 is just between the seller and the seller's broker. The other ones are for how the buyer's broker is getting paid. And it could be one of these or a combination of the 3. Now, let's go to the second page of the instructions to closing attorney. This part has to do with money from the seller's broker paid out to one of the parties or in a referral. So paragraph A is the seller's broker paying out fees or rebates going to a paid out as set forth below, how much and who it's being paid to. And paragraph 6B is how much money the buyer's broker is paying out in fees or rebates, like a referral fee or a rebate, how much and to whom. And then there's a place for special stipulations. Now, here's where the signatures are. So you're used to seeing the agent / broker signatures, and you're going to have to sign because this is money coming in to you or coming out from you for brokerage for professional services. And then we've had in July 1st of 2024, GAR did add a signature line for the seller. In January of 2025, they have added a signature line for the buyer. Now, GAR has given us a sentence there so we know when the public buyer or seller are to sign. We're really used to just the agent signing the instructions to closing attorney. Now we've got signature lines for our public whom we work with. And it says, if the buyer is paying buyer's broker compensation as referenced above, then the buyer signs. If the seller is paying the buyer's broker compensation as referenced above, then the seller signs. So if there's just money changing hands between the two brokerages, then only the agent sign. if one of the public people, the buyer or the seller, is compensating the buyer's broker directly, then they would sign here. So if the seller is just paying the seller's broker and not paying the buyer's broker directly, they don't need to sign because they've already signed in the one of the seller forms. So the big changes again for 2025 are these check boxes, as well as they have added a signature line for the buyer if at closing the buyer is still paying some or all of the compensation they've obligated themselves to their buyer's broker. I hope that helped you guys out going over the changes that GAR has made for 2025 to the instructions to closing attorney. Thank you so much for watching. Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors, satisfying your needs with service, innovation, and education. Bye. If you like that video, check out the one here. If you like the content on this entire channel, please click here to subscribe. I try to take even the most complicated of real estate situations and make them crystal clear. See what I did there? Real estate made crystal clear. Thank you guys so much for watching.